In this video, I share some of my tips on how to pick a programming language for beginners. Let's get started. Welcome back, fellow coders. This is the first video in the series of coding talks. So we're going to talk about picking a language. Now, picking a language for beginners is a little bit of a hard task because there are many programming languages out there, and beginners sort of get overwhelmed on which one to pick. So the first tip is don't listen to anyone, including myself. You can't really listen to someone that already knows how to program and tells you Java is a good programming language because they already know the programming language. So you have to make the decisions on your own because everybody thinks different. I was always sort of a logical thinker. So for me, it was a little bit different coming up as a self-taught programmer. And so if you study computer science in college, then you might think different. Maybe one of your teachers sort of rubbed how they thought about programming. So the biggest number one tip that I have is pick a programming language based on your goals and abilities. And we're going to take a look at some examples in the next slide. So these are some of the examples that are very clear. If you want to make iPhone apps, there's no other way around it. You have to know Objective-C or Swift, and you have to learn how to use the Xcode IDE. If you want to make Android apps, you have to learn Java or Kotlin, and you also have to know how to use their IDEs. Android Studio is their official IDE, but they also provide plugins for Eclipse, IntelliJ, and I'm not sure if they provide plugins for other ones. If you want to make games with the engine, this one is just as hard as picking a language. There's tons of engines out there. Unity 3D, Unreal, Game Maker, Game Salad, and the list goes on and on. So you have to ask yourself, what kind of game do you want to do? What kind of resources do you have? And then you have to pick your engine based on that. In addition to this, there's other things. Artificial intelligence, data science, making your own game engine, and there's tons of other things that you can do with programming. So once you pick the language, then you have to move on to learning mode. These are some of the things that are almost universal across all languages. Variables hold your data. So that's probably in every language. You'll have to learn different syntax here and there, but overall, variables are almost universal. A string is a string in Python, a string is a string in Java, C++, and so on. Same with an integer, a character, a float. All of those things are almost the same. Control structures, and these are things like if statements, while loops, for loops, anything that controls the flow of your program. And again, these are things that are universal. You'll also need to learn how to do data structures, and without getting into too much detail, this will sort of help you develop cleaner programs and also help you in object-oriented programming methodology. Obviously, you need to learn the syntax because without the syntax, you're going to get a lot of errors. Tools are very important just for any job. You have to learn how to use your IDE. On top of that, you have to learn how to use libraries that help you do more. Whether it's a data logging library, a graphical user interface library, wherever it is, you have to learn all those things to make you an efficient programmer. Okay, now for the conclusion. Once you pick the language and know how to do all those basic things, you need to pick a small project. It could be small to medium size, and you need to complete it. Now, this is going to be a huge step going forward for you, and it might be a little bit difficult at times, but you have all these resources online where you can ask for help. Stack Overflow, Google, and there's just tons of forums out there to help beginners. Now, this is going to be the time when you ask yourself, well, I'm only making console apps, and that's going to get kind of boring. Yes, it might get boring in the beginning, but trust me that once you do the building blocks of programming, there's no stopping from there. Graphical user interface is going to come later. Don't worry. Try not to rush. And what I tell beginners is that when you're learning a language, it's sort of like learning a new subject. So there's going to be days where you get a headache and you're like, well, I don't understand this concept. I'm just going to give up. And I encourage you not to do that. In the beginning, it's a new language and it's going to look like gibberish. So you have to take things slowly and take breaks and let the information sink in the beginning. Now, if you have a book and you don't understand the concept from the book, then I encourage you to go to YouTube and see if you can find a better explanation for it. Now, what about other languages? So once you learn a language, let's say that you pick Python. Well, I recommend learning another language right after that. Yes, of course. Now, what I suggest is that don't try to learn two languages at once, especially if it's your very first language. And the other thing to keep in mind is that most languages' syntax is almost the same, but there's subtle differences. So for example, if you pick Python, then you're going to get used to a very relaxed syntax. And let's say that you pick Java or C++, then it's going to get a little bit tough in the beginning because those languages have stricter syntax. So keep that in mind as well when picking a language. Lastly, visual tools. There's tons of people out there that are visual learners. So for this, I recommend Raptor Flowchart. It's a programming tool and they only have it for Windows, but you can run it on Mac with Wine. And it's just a great tool for running programs because you can sort of see everything visually, how the program flow as you step through the statements. We're going to wrap it up there. And I want you to tell me in the comments which one was your first language and why. And if you could go back, will you have picked a different language? Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next Coding Talk.